Are you tired of riding the monthly emotional roller coaster? Or maybe you're worried about your age. Maybe you're feeling beat up with your body betraying you when all you want to do is hold your baby in your arms. I'm Dr. Karen, and I have a vision. It's that every woman who desires to have a baby can and does. I help women like you realize that your history is not your destiny. I reveal powerful, practical, yet often neglected details that you can use to reclaim your body's natural wisdom, bridge the mind-body connection, and turn your baby-making possibilities into probabilities. Hello and welcome to the Pregnancy Success Podcast. I'm Dr. Karen, and this is where I am so delighted I get to help you work towards reclaiming your body's natural wisdom so you can move from just dreaming of having your baby to actually holding that baby in your arms. Today, I'm going to go over some of the how to enhance your fertility, how to optimize getting pregnant and having that baby. Because how is a piece of the process. Last week, I went over how the what was over 90% of it. That's the thinking piece. But women are always asking me the hows, how to do this, how to do that. And it is a critical 10 piece of what's going on, but it's not the only piece. And within that 10%, there is the assisted reproductive techniques like IVF, but there's a whole host of other things that you can do. And today I'm going to start my series of 4 body basics. The 4 basic things that you can do with your body that can really ramp up and enhance your pregnancy potential. And so today, if you want to join along and see what's there, I have a little worksheet that explains today in a more detail, little graphic. So you can get that on my website at www.thebabymakinggenius.com. And so you may be wondering, what's the benefit of the body basic piece? Because the mind-body connection is so important. And the mind piece comes before the body piece because it is the bigger component. However, we don't want to leave out those critical things that you can do. And critical being the important word, because the 4 things that I'm going to talk about, I didn't create them. I just codified it into a process that makes it simple and easy so that you can make those dramatic shifts and you can feel better and have that baby. And so when we look at what's going on in the body, we want to think about what's critical, what's essential, what's needed. So the 4 body basics, when you think about it, are movement, rest, and sleep is 1. The next one is diet, or your food, what you ingest. The third one is water. And the 4th one, which is the most critical one, I'm going to do them in this reverse order, is, you guessed it, the breath. Breathing. And I know you are breathing every day, every moment of every day, but it is truly the quality of your breath which dictates the quality of your health. And when you think about it, well, movement and rest, not so much, but if you had no sleep, yeah, it would really affect how you are with your well-being for prolonged periods of time, 3 months to 3 years maybe, before you really had some negative, dramatic impacts to the body. But when you look at eating, if you don't eat for 3 or 4 weeks, you can still survive. If you don't drink water, the average person, 3 to 4 days. But with your breath, the breath, you only have 3 to 4 minutes. So that's really, really important to make sure that you are leaning into quality breath, because most of us don't realize we hold our breath an awful lot. And when you think about it, when we breathe, we talk as we exhale. So if we're holding our breath, some people talk for longer periods of time while holding their breath and then let this whoosh out of breath at the end. So we're doing a lot of breath holding, which creates tension in the body. And if you're creating tension in your body and you notice that in your neck and your shoulders, imagine what all this tension is doing to your beautiful, delicate tubes, ovaries. What could be happening to those organs that just really, you don't really think about it until you really are thinking about using them? And we probably take them for granted. We might take other parts of our body for granted, but our breath really, really is critical. Not only is the breath critical, it is just part of life in many different cultures. In Asian cultures, where they do more meditation, in India cultures, where they do a lot of regular yoga. Yoga is a practice, but yoga is not just a practice like it is in Western countries. It is a way of life. It's not just the movements or the asanas. It is the pranayama, the breathwork process, because prana is that life force energy. We want to make sure that we're leaning into that life force energy. Because breath is just so very, very important. When I was in India doing my yoga teacher training, it really, really made a big impact when I was doing my practices and learning to do things. Because when I was holding my breath, because I was stressed and worried about doing this headstand for the first time, it wasn't part of my wheelhouse in my yoga practice before I went to the yoga teacher training. So I was very fearful and stressed. And no, day after day, I just couldn't get it until the yogi who was doing our training was in on this third day and said, Karen, relax your breath. And he had me do some breath work practices before then. I just moved into the pose just like that. And it was day and night how working with my breath enabled me to get into my body and really relax and then do the piece that I wanted to do. And we can extrapolate this to all parts of our wellness and our health. Just think about that freeze, fight, and flight when we're stressed. You know, it used to be from running from, the saber-toothed tiger. But now it's all sorts of other things that causes stress chronically to turn on. When we have this stress in our body, it's just really, really hard to slow things down, bring the calm in, let the body relax. And then therefore, when the body, those big muscles that we notice relax, then the littler muscles can relax. I first actually noticed it as well when I went away and did a 10-day silent meditation or retreat. It's called a Vipassana. And I had been quite stressed and sore, tense with work. And so much so that my yoga practice, a yin yoga practice where you're doing some stretching and trying to get into your body, I was using mega props, lots of blocks and bolsters and cushions. My reclined twist, so where I would be lying on my back with my knees bent, feet on the floor, and let my legs go to one side. I would have 3 or 4 blocks on one side because my knees would just only tip over a little bit, just the aches and pains in my shoulders, neck, and low back, as well as into my hips. And so after 6 days of my 10-day silent meditation retreat, I was doing some gentle stretching every day, but on day 6, it was amazing. That night before bed, when I was doing a few of my stretches and doing my reclined twist, lo and behold, not only could I get rid of 2 blocks that I didn't even notice that I was having any strain or pain or discomfort while I was doing it. On day 7, because I had been having daily pain, I woke up pain-free. It was so phenomenal. It was just like this release in my body, so that working with your breath, doing that awareness piece, noticing how you inhale, noticing how you exhale. Are you holding your breath? How long are you holding your breath? Just shifting away from that can really, really make a difference. So what's all the hype? Maybe you don't do yoga. Maybe you're not interested in doing any meditation. But let's just think about the body in general. You are made up of 37 trillion cells. So the physiology of a cell needs oxygen to work properly. Well oxygenated cells work even better. So you're aware that when you don't have good blood flow to the heart, and good blood flow also means there's not as much oxygen getting to the heart because of blockages or spasm, you have a heart attack. Wow. Well, imagine if you're not breathing and having great quality of breath. And how's that affecting, as I said, those delicate little tubes, those little itty bitty hairs that are in the side of the tubes that move that egg down so that the sperm are moved up to meet and then moves that fertilized egg down into the body of the uterus. Why is that really important? Well, when you think about it, we want to make sure that There's well oxygenated ovarian cells, so those follicles that are being developed, you want those cells to divide properly and have the right chromosome content to be ideal and optimal egg that is optimally released in the process of your ovulation phase. You want that lining in your uterus to be lush and healthy so that fertilized egg can implant and grow and develop into the embryo and progress on to baby in your arms. You want well oxygenated, all that hypothalamic pituitary ovarian axis is really important. So the brain functions better when you breathe better. So again, that quality of your breath truly dictates the quality of your health, and not just from your breathing and how you function with, exercise. It's your whole body system. So we want to optimize all those hormonal levels that are released from the hypothalamus and the pituitary, because they feed back onto the ovary and those hormones feed back to the brain. So well oxygenated cells can really, really do that. When I was doing my life coach training through the Brave Thinking Institute, one of the people that my mentor, Mary Morrissey, exposes us to is a fellow called Gay Hendricks, Dr. Gay Hendricks. And he has a PhD, and he's written probably 30 or 40 books. But one of his books particularly caught my attention, and it is the Conscious Breathing book. And what really, really astonished me about this is how, with everyday examples, he put into place how, not just studies, but just following people, that your conscious breathing, awareness of your breath, really is a tool as helping your self-healing organism. So that when you cut your finger, if your blood system is working right, it is self-healing because it will produce a scab. After it produces the clot will come first, and then it scabs over, and then it heals. Your body, when a bone breaks, it knits together and actually becomes a stronger bone than the rest of the bones in your body. So it only makes sense that when you take these great quality breaths and you are conscious of that, you're aware of that, and you do it repeatedly, that you can have this amazing quality of life. As to some of the things that I've explained, he goes over in his various chapters how quality breath will help release stress and tension. It helps you manage pain, helps you build endurance and energy. And we've seen some of these things with, for example, I've seen a TV commercial. I'm not sure what it was for, but I saw Sidney Crosby, the hockey player, on the treadmill, getting the extra oxygen and seeing how well he can perform and endure. And professional athletes, not so much that they're breathing pure oxygen, but they are doing all sorts of different breath practices and therapies and being well oxygenated so that they can function to a higher level. It will also help assist with mental and emotional regulation and mastery. For example, the different breath practices with tantric yoga help you have a different kind of performance and a different kind of experience. It can even help you with healing different physical problems. It also contributes to graceful aging. I for sure saw all sorts of yogis, elderly yogis, they call them babas, on the side of the road in the different town and around. And when you ask these gentlemen how old they were, some of them really didn't know. They're not often well educated, but the few that I asked, they were in their 90s, and you wouldn't even know it. I thought they might have been 65, maybe 75, but these gentlemen were in their 90s, these yogis, these babas, and still moving around, still in great health, still doing their yoga practice because they maintain this kind of lifelong practice. And all sorts of studies are out there to help with that mental concentration, helps us sleep. And when you sleep, you feel better. And it just also helps you develop that spiritual, social transformation. And whether you believe and follow yoga practice, as I said, a meditation practice, maybe you're not into any of that stuff. But you may be aware that other cultures as well believe, even very far back, ancient cultures talk about how the breath is equivalent to the spirit, and that's part of, well, some people talk about the mind-body spiritual connection and balancing of all those. So having that quality breath, that spirit piece, is really, really important. I myself am Catholic, and when I look back into the book of Genesis in chapter 2, where in creation, God blew into his nostrils, meaning man. And so we receive this great gift. I can't turn on my breathing. I can't shut off my breathing. I can manipulate it to be slower or faster, deeper or more shallow, but I can't turn it on and off. So it is just, to me, that there is this amazing force out there that allows me to wake up every day because I'm breathing every day. I got up this morning, and I am truly grateful for that, because not everybody did. And so when you think about that and lean into your breath practices, you can have so many more results. I like comparing that inhale, pause, and exhale, and maybe again a pause of the yogic breath, your basic breath, the traditional breath, however you want to describe it. It is the Esche, Fiat, Magnificat. So the Esche is the exhale, that's the empty, sorry, that's the empty. So in my religion, that's you just have that behold, like I have that emptiness. Then as I inhale, I'm breathing in that amazing love and light from God, that merciful love, that amazing beingness. And I just love to breathe that in. And then when I exhale, I'm letting go, like other practices talk about, other cultures, letting go of tension and things that aren't serving you. And I'm just letting that go because I'm sharing that out to the world. And then I have that pause before I repeat the process. So it's very interesting, whatever culture, whatever religion that you look at, that breath work actually has come into play for a long, long period of time. And if you are not into different religions or cultures, that's not part of what makes you up, that's not part of your jam, well, then maybe you would enjoy this particular book that I enjoyed reading called Breath by James Nestor. He talks about pulmonauts, not so much respirologists, as that's the medical term for the study of the respiratory tract and the system, how it interrelates with the rest of the body. This Mr. Nestor fellow talks about pulmonauts, and these are people who have studied breath work. Most of them are not necessarily even physicians, but he does review some of the workings, some of the ancient works, and he went around the world and looked at and tried a bunch of different practices and did a bunch of different things. And some of his stories are just quite crazy and quite funny how he puts himself, because he wanted to improve his own personal health and wellness. And it's an interesting journey. It's a great read. I personally listened to it on Audible. It's only about 7 hours, but I really, really enjoyed it. And it's very important to notice that wherever you're coming from, that when we speak, we breathe. We speak on the exhale of our breath. When we inhale, we're not breathing so much. We're breathing, we're not talking so much. And that's very noticeable with singers. And they have great movement of not just their lungs, but with their bellies as well. So they're taking these quality breaths. My favorite singer is Celine Dion, and no one can belt it out, in my opinion, better than her. And having those beautiful octaves and hearing the sounds that she can produce, just the music that she makes is just from her singing alone is fantastic. And that's all done because you have great breath. For those of you who really love the science and medical aspect of things, there has been in November of 2023 a meta-analysis. Meta-analysis means it brings in a lot of quality articles, research evidence, and they have a certain number that they start with, and they look at the quality of this evidence, the quality of how they produced it. And this study on looking at guidelines to provide for breathwork practices to help reduce stress and anxiety. And they looked at over 3,000 studies, and they brought it down to that. There was only 58 that really had quality evidence. And they had 78 different practices in there, of which 54 they really thought that they could recommend. And when you think about all this stuff, wow, that's a lot of information. and that's well-studied information. And their goal was that they shown with their study, their meta-analysis, and they looked at studies, and it's not just recent studies. There were studies from 1978, 79, 85, all the way through 80s and 90s, till just before early in 2023, before it was published, the meta-analysis was published. These studies came not just from India and Asia, there were a lot in Japan, but there was also contributions from the United Kingdom, the US, as well as Canada. So a lot of studies went into this to look at what's going on with the breath and what can we do, how can we optimize breathing practices and help people reduce their stress and anxiety. And they came up with 4 specific recommendations besides the different breathwork practices. But what they mentioned was you want to make sure that you have not just fast breathing practices. Those will get you invigorated and actually help you with your endurance, pre-workout, those kinds of things. But for stress and anxiety, you want calming practices. The second piece of that is that the practices need to last longer than 5 minutes. 5 minutes is the bare minimum to make a difference. So if you're new to breath practice work, yes, start for a couple of minutes several times a day to get in that routine, but over the course of a month or so, you want to really ramp that up to the 5-minute mark so that you can actually enjoy the benefits. The other piece was longevity, that you're actually doing these practices for an extended lifetime, not just for a few weeks while you're trying to look at getting pregnant. You want to maintain these practices the rest of your life. It will help with your pregnancy. It will help with absolutely with your delivery. It'll help you with, those breastfeeding, sleepless nights as the kids get older and want to get into that habit as you're switching out through different life phases yourself as a woman. You want to maintain these breathing practices for a lifetime because it's really, really important. And the other piece that was interesting is that standing, you don't want to do a lot of these breath practices while you're standing, because when you think about it, your body is your breath container is like a box. It's got the front and back and 2 sides. The top, yes, it's open, but it's got those accessory muscles and you can close your throat. But the bottom of your box is your pelvic floor. So we want to make sure that you're relaxed so you can optimize your practice. And if you're standing, it's very hard to do that. You also don't want to do this if you've just eaten, because you're not going to have the diaphragm movement because you've got a full belly. It's very uncomfortable. And the last piece that really is critical so that you can optimize your breathwork practices and really enhance your fertility is that you want to have some human training. It's great to read a book. It's great to watch a YouTube video, but this is where we fall short with ourselves, that you really want to have somebody at some point in time say, am I doing this right? Watching it with you so that you can see and notice where we're missing, because when we are in the picture frame, we actually don't see the pieces that we aren't doing it right. And not right as being it's wrong. It's just how to optimize it so that we actually are going to achieve the benefits that we truly desire. And so it's the same with the breath work as it is with other things, that, it's great to have somebody teach you. And if you don't teach you, that they follow up and can follow up and see, am I doing this? Because we don't realize when we're cutting corners, or we do, and we don't acknowledge it. And we want to make sure that we're optimizing all the simple pieces that you can do multiple times a day, every day of the week for the rest of your life. In addition to this meta-analysis, if you want to look at some of these studies that have been done in PubMed, for example, you can search in there and find over 20,000 breath practices articles, and most of them have been published since 2010. When I, in comparison, thought, this is an interesting number. What's available on Google that really aren't so much scientific? Well, in less than my 1 second, I got 4.5 billion hits of different articles on breathing practices. So there's lots of stuff out there if you really want to look it up. I mentioned a couple of books, but the best thing that I love about really noticing about your breathing practice would be my 5-year-old son. my kids were born, and they did have some breathing stuff happen along the way. Inherited some asthma and atopy, so they both had some puffers. Jacob was my firstborn, the most affected, and needed his puffer a little bit more. And when we moved to where we were from birth at St. John's, Newfoundland, to coastal city, so moist air, and so it was great for his lungs, so it wasn't too dry and wasn't too irritating. We went to near where I lived and moved to St. John, New Brunswick, for 3 short years. And that city is an oil industry, pulp and paper mill, tissue plant. So it really wasn't that great for the breathing. They weren't terribly ill, but did require the puffers a little bit more regularly there. And when we moved finally to the capital city here in Canada, Ottawa, just outside of Ottawa, but it is a, government town, industry is computer science and those kinds of things. So other than the tech and farming just outside, Jacob had, I think he was 6 years old, took a deep breath in on the 3rd day we were there. Mommy, the air is so fresh and clean up here. I love it. So out of the mouth of babes, children notice things. They may not notice them as scientifically written in a report. It wouldn't fit into, an article or a meta-analysis, but it truly hits home that you want to make sure that you're looking into where you're living, how you're breathing, what the quality of your breathing is like, optimizing what you can with that. And so that not just with medications or puffers if you have a medical condition or a diagnosis, but what else can you do to help improve that for yourself? And so with all that being said, I really wanted to go over 3 or 4 of my favorite practices so that it just helps you get into what you're going to do. You can follow along and look at the link that I have for the handout that will explain these. You can Google them as well. There's all sorts of people to help you, show you to do that. But as I said, after you've practiced it for a little while, not too long, you want to have somebody who's knowledgeable with these to go over them with you to make sure you're doing the pieces that are, making a difference for you, because we all, cut corners and try and get there sooner or differently. Things may not work for us, but we really want to make sure we're optimizing them to the best possible. So that being said, I want to go over the basic breath. I mentioned it earlier, the yogic breath, depending on where you're coming from. It's well described there if you're looking at that, but it's also called the box breath, square breath, rectangle breath. And it depends on what you have is an inhale, a hold, an exhale, and a hold. And I don't like to call them holds because that's what you'll see in the literature. They're a pause. It's an inhale and a retain pause in, and an exhale and a retain that pause on the exhale. So your inhales and exhales are the same. And in the box breath, so are your holds. And that is very challenging for people, even to inhale for the count of 3. If you've not done breathwork practices, it may be challenging to retain that breath in for a count of 3. And then you get to the point where you're exhaling for the count of 3, and then to retain it out again for a count of 3 can be very challenging. So this is where I like the box breath. And I describe it as a rectangle breath, more so the 2x4. And I like the analogy of the 2x4 because that gets into how I work with my practice, as well as if I'm not doing it, you might as well hit me over the head with a 2x4, because I'm not going to have that quality of the help because I'm not focusing on the quality of my breath. So your inhales and your exhales are going to be the 4. The retain or the pause is going to be for the count of 2. So you would inhale for the 4 count, and then you would pause for the 2. You would hold it out. You'd exhale for 4, and then you would hold the pause for the exhale would be 2. So it's inhale 4, pause 2, exhale 4, and pause for 2. And then what I like to do is I go through 4 rounds of that. I do 4 of them in a row, 4 of those breaths, very focusing on that. And then I do a second set. And when I do my second set, so that I'm distracted and that I'm relaxing more of my body, I'm rubbing my thumb and my finger together back and forth, but I'm rubbing them super slow so that I could feel the finger ridges on both of my finger pads. So that when I'm inhaling for the count of 4, I'm pausing for a 2, I'm exhaling for a count of 4, and I pause again for the count of 2 at the end of the exhale, that I have 4 amazing quality breaths. And that may not get you to your 5 minutes, but that's a great start. If you do that 2 or 3 or 4 times a day, before breakfast, before lunch, before supper, and before bed, you're going to really notice the difference. And then you're just going to increase the time of which you're doing them. Over time, you could as well increase the inhales for the count of 5. Then you're going to do your pauses for the count of 3. Your exhales are going to be the 5 again, and then your pause out will be for a 3 count. So this is where you can work on manipulating your breath to your benefit so that you can release the tension, relax the body. It is stress releasing, anxiety releasing, as well as sleep promoting. It balances your hormones. It will help all sorts of things in your body, and it's just really amazing. Other pieces with this basic breath that I really wanted to mention is, if you're interested, when you take that big breath in, that breath is going to start in at the belly. And when you inhale, that belly expands. And then when you bring the breath in further, you're going to breathe it into the chest. So the front, the back, and the sides of your chest. And then at the end of your inhale, those collarbones, those accessory muscles of the neck and shoulders may move up. And then when you pause on the exhale, the reverse happens. So those accessory muscles of the neck and shoulders relax, the chest falls in, the sides fall in, the belly deflates, and then you have that pause. So it's a beautiful wave experience. It's nice and rhythmic. It's like your heartbeat has a nice rhythm. Your breathing should have a nice rhythm. And when you're aware of that quality of your breathing, then you have the improved awareness and the quality of your health. For those people who are really kind of scientific, when you take that breath in, science on ultrasound has shown it's not just the diaphragm that drops when you take that breath in so that your belly expands so you have room. The pelvic floor actually is the very first piece. The pelvic floor will drop a little bit first. So that's why it's important to be sitting, comfortable, relaxed. You could be lying down. You don't want to have a full meal because then there's no movement. You don't want to be tense and therefore standing for prolonged periods of time. That's not when you want to be doing your breath practice. Occasionally, maybe to figure it out or have an opportunity time frame, but the majority of our practices, you want the relaxed shoulders and body, you want the relaxed seat, you want that pelvic floor to feel relaxed so that you really can take in that amazing air and exhale what's not serving you and just feel the love and gratitude with the amazing breath. And so the second breath that I wanted to talk about is a little bit more advanced. Not terribly advanced, all of you should be able to do it, but just be aware if you have a breathing condition or health condition that you want to maybe check with your healthcare provider that it's safe for you to do. If you have a breathing challenge or condition and you use puffers, you may want to have them on hand because some of this, when you're working with this, can trigger a little bit of flare. But the second practice is the alternate nostril breathing. And I love this practice when I was in India. It was truly fantastic. If you have hypertension, high blood pressure, especially if it's not controlled, you want to not do this until you have that well settled with whatever appropriate medications that your healthcare provider recommends. But this practice balances the left and right sides of your brain so that it also helps with relaxing the body. It helps with focus, attention, concentration, patience. So if you're feeling stressed and overwhelmed with what's going on, where you are on your fertility journey, this practice is really going to give you that balance and settling. If you're feeling challenged because your cycles are out of whack, Well, this is going to work with your brain and balancing your brain. So your hypothalamic pituitary ovarian axis is going to get reset and readjusted, and that is going to be helpful for your cycle, as well as all that oxygenation piece, so that that uterine lining is lush and beautiful, so that fertilized egg can meet and make its way down in there perfectly and beautifully. So how this technique really works is that you are going to as well be sitting comfortably, and you're going to block one side and breathe through the other, and then block that side and breathe through the other. And as there are anywhere, you'll find different start stops based on what side do you start with, what side do you stop with. If you're doing this practice for about the 5 minutes, it really won't matter where you start, so long as that you're maintaining the rhythm of the practice, and then just exhaling from both sides at the very end. So it's a beautiful practice that just is that brain balancing, harmonizing the body. It also can help maintain body temperature. So if you're having challenges as well, that can settle that out for you. So what you would do when you're blocking, and there's all sorts of different hand positions, so you want to just be comfortable. And I use my thumb to block my right nostril. Some people block at the bottom, but I don't like that. I just would rather press gently from the side. And then the other two fingers are going to block, well, it's the ring finger is going to block, but I just don't want to get anything in the way, and make it easy from going from left to right to left to back to the right again. So you inhale through both nostrils, then you would block the right and exhale through the left. After you've exhaled through the left, you inhale through the left, and then you block the left and exhale through the right. You inhale through the right, and then you block the right and exhale through the left. And this repeats. So after you've exhaled through the left, you inhale through the left, block the left, and then exhale on the right, and then inhale on the right, block the right, and then you just keep going. And then you would repeat that process. I would recommend, if you're just new to this, again, you're only going to start for 2-3 minutes. If you've done this off and on through other experiences, like a yoga class or a meditation group that you're working with, or you've seen it before and you're used to practice it, then really dive into getting to that 5 minutes. So you really might want to spend 5 minutes doing that, and then taking a break for a minute, breathing normally, naturally, regularly, and then doing another set right away. So that will really help in balancing the brain, balancing and calming the mind, balancing the hormones, calming the body, and getting out of that freeze, fight, and flight mode. Because in that mode, you're only using your vital organs. So your lungs, your heart, your muscles. You don't stop to pee. You're not going to stop to poo. And when you think about it, those are secondary organs, working with your digestive tract. But your ovarian, your reproductive organs, your ovaries, your cervix, your tubes, that stuff is a tertiary organ. So that's really the last that's going to come back if you're in this freeze, fight, and flight mode. So to move you out of that mode, bringing into that calm, relaxed, the rest, digest, manifest. Medicine calls it rest, digest, create. If you want to create a baby, then we really want you to lean into some of these breathing practices, because they will set you on a new course. Absolutely. So we've talked about the basic breath, that box, or 2x4 breath, as I like to call it. The next one I did was the alternate nostril breathing. The third one that I want to describe to you is the 4-7-8 breath. And this is really also very helpful. It was one of the done in the meta-analysis that was well examined. And that really helps reduce your stress. It will help reduce anxiety. It also helps with sleep. And sleep is really critical to help with the other body processes. That's when we repair the body, when we heal and do our healing. So sleeping is really, really important. And the 4-7-8 breath is really helpful for that. So as I described, the 2x4 breath, there's 4 pieces: the inhale, the pause, the exhale, and a pause. This one only has 3 sides. So you inhale for a count of 4, you pause or retain in for a count of 7, you exhale for a count of 8. And there is no retain out. You move into the next piece. So that is a little bit more of a different practice. And that really, really is the one that I like to do before bed, because that just gets me into the zone. It calms the body, relaxes me. And I fall asleep doing this practice, and I don't need to do it for long. So at other times of the day, it doesn't make me fall asleep, but it just really does calm the body from, stressful work environment, sitting in my desk at my chair for too long. So it really helps to relax my body so that I can just enjoy my body. And then the last breath that I really find very interesting as well, I learned about it through James Nestor's book, the Breathwork, the Breath book, Breath, nice bright yellow cover. His book talked about this technique, the Dr. Buteyko technique from Ukraine. He developed this in the 1950s, and he used it to help people who had breathing challenges improve their breathing. So asthmatics, people with COPD, and other chronic lung conditions, and really, really made a difference. So he's done a lot of studies back in the 1950s and onwards with this, and stated as being clinically safe, proven effective to make a difference for breathing challenges. But it is a breath retention practice. And it can also be used to help with endurance for exercise and activity. So this is the breath practice that Tom Cruise used for the Mission Impossible movie, where he was underwater for the couple of minutes. This is the technique that is used for that. So that is where you have an inhale and hold, and then you exhale, and then you hold out for as long as physically possible. So that's why it's a breath retention practices, because you're not so much retaining the breath, you're retaining the absence of breath before you take that next big breath in. So if you're thinking about it, you use this kind of technique when you're blowing out birthday candles in a modified sense. So if you're blowing out 5 or 6 candles, it's not so many, but if you're blowing out 46 candles, a lot more candles as adults, then this would be if you're trying to blow out and blow out more and blow out more, but you're pausing then at the end of that long exhale before you take that next breath in. So it's a really, really interesting breath. I won't go into it any more detail than that, but it's really, really helpful. And so those are my 4 favorite breath practices. I use that last one when I'm working on my running and working on my physical endurance. And I think you'll like them too. You'll really notice a difference when you sit down and relax and lean into working with the breath practices, that you're just not really aware that, yes, I'm breathing. Yes, I breathe every day. Well, I'm alive, aren't I? So, I'm obviously breathing. One of the favorite phrases that a lot of people use are, when feeling stressed, just stop, just breath, just take a breath. And it's like, well, I am breathing. It's just not a quality breath. So if you want me to breathe with quality, stop harping at me and demonstrate that so that I can imitate and mimic that while you're doing it. So be my role model and help me to become more relaxed. And so that's where it's really, really helpful. And I've seen these breath practices used as well when in labor and delivery. Had an amazing, I was working nurse who did some breath work with clients during their labor, and so that they could be more calm, be more relaxed, delayed getting an epidural or not even needing one. Definitely helps with delivery. There's all sorts of breath practices that you can utilize to help you move through different processes. And if it works well at those points in time, let's just take a step back and lean into these breath practices will help relax the body, settle a hormone imbalance, get me on the right track. And if I still need any assisted reproductive techniques or IVF, then my success rate is not going to be, so low. If you're 25 to 34, it's only 40% effective. 35 to 39, it's 20% effective. And for those ladies over 40, it's 10% effective. well, you can really up the ante with your success rates, spontaneously or with assisted help, so that really, if you really want to have that baby, we want to help you do what you can. And the first things first, let's work with your breath. And so I've been delighted to share these different tools and techniques with you today so that you can help optimize that breathing. I hope you join me next week because I'm going to go over my second body basic. Sneak peek, it's about water. And we'll see what we can do to improve that. And so I would love to thank you again. I love spending time with you guys every week. If you want to have those explanations as I describe them, the handout is in the show notes, or you can find them on my website at www.thebabymakinggenius.com. And if you want to, you can follow along on LinkedIn. I do share some other benefits and other approaches and things of that nature related to getting pregnant and having your baby and holding your baby. And I can be found on LinkedIn at /Karen Stillman -pregnancy success. And so until we do it again next week, I would love for you to continue to set your own thermostat, because your history is not your destiny. And if you need to, come borrow my belief, because I believe in you. Reclaim your body's natural wisdom with me, Dr. Karen. My goal is to help you awaken, align, and amplify your mind-body connection to transform your fertility. Find free worksheets, instructional videos, our Facebook group, and more, including details on booking a free discovery session where we can create your personalized, beautiful baby blueprint today and get you closer to holding your baby. It's all online at www.thebabymakinggenius.com.
All content provided by Dr. Karen Stillman is not intended to replace medical help or advice from your doctor or healthcare provider. All content, including medications and visualizations, shall be regarded as self-help. Dr. Karen Stillman accepts no responsibility for any injury, loss, or damage as a direct or indirect result of using or relying on the information presented here, as she is not offering medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Please see our full terms and conditions and privacy policy on the website at www.thebabymakinggenius.com.